Okay, good evening, and we'll call the meeting to order, the February the 8th regular council meeting. I haven't had any regrets, and I see everybody's here. Invitation to stand and move. This is just something we do every meeting. You're all aware that if you need to stand and move and leave for whatever, just go ahead and do it. We have an agenda. Any additions to the agenda? Seeing none, the agenda stands approved as presented. Conflict of interest, anybody who has a conflict of interest can declare it now or declare it when the item comes up if you have anything. If you know it now, you can do it now as well. We have a presentation. We have Réal Boudreau, Comité d'action pour une nouvelle école à Pumlico West. There's an attachment, and if you want to press your button there to turn your mic on, I will turn it on for you. You are now ready to go.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Préfet, de nous accueillir pour commencer avec. Et je vais vous présenter le comité, and I'll turn to English in a few moments, mais je vais prendre l'occasion pour vous présenter le comité. Le comité a été formé en 2021, environ au printemps, au mois de juin. Et il est composé principalement de 5 personnes. Et il y en a 4 de nous autres qui sont ici ce soir. Moi-même, Roland Déon, Sean D'Entremont et Elaine Leblanc. Alors, nous sommes ce comité-là et nous sommes épaulés par plusieurs membres de la communauté scolaire qui nous guident et qui nous avisent là-dessus, mais c'est nous quand même qui font les décisions. So having been formed in June of 2021, and we're volunteers, strictly volunteers. There's no, there is no remuneration being paid for that. The PowerPoint presentation that I have before you, that is on the screen here, was prepared initially for presentation before le Conseil scolaire acadien provincial, le CSAP, but we recently revised it. So you will see some issue, and I will go over it. I believe you have a full copy available to you of the PowerPoint presentation, but I will, for the purposes of the public presentation, I would like to go over some highlights. Of course, at the end, we do have a request, but it's not a monetary one. So I believe that is a little easier on the pocketbook. So, and I believe Alex is handling the scroll. So Alex, if you would go to the third full screen, I consider that one the first screen. So if you go to the third screen, you will see that it's entitled L'école historique et situation géographique. That slide was prepared especially for the CSAP because certain members are not familiar with the geographical challenges that we have in our region as well. L'École Pumlico West, which is currently in operation and one of the schools of the CSAP, opened in 1961. So it's a structure that exists since 1961. And yes, it is showing its age. There were renovations because of course, the population booms post-Second World War, and the kids were abounding. Some were made in 1965, and then there were more current renovations in 1989. Those of you who are familiar with the school, and I'm thinking of the counselors, especially in the Pumlico area, the gymnasium was constructed and an elevator was added, and I will address the issue of the elevator in a few moments as well, although it doesn't appear on the screen. So that is what we're at. And there's something that's not mentioned on the slide, is that in the early 2000s, there was a major flood in the school in the winter as a result of pipes bursting. So what the reality of that is that because of that incident, a lot of repairs were done, and arguably, and we accept that argument, that it did add a few years to the school because they were able to address certain issues with the funding that was available at that time. So, for example, L'École Pumlico West was constructed more or less at the same time as Wedgeport, but Wedgeport was in much more dire straits than École Pumlico West 10 years ago, 15 years ago, because I think there was some added years to the longevity of our school as a result of those repairs done in the early 2000s. Alex, if you want to go to the next slide, you'll see what we had done is we had added that for the people at the CSAP outside of the area who would be able to understand. Some of them were arguing that, well, you have a school in Belleville and you have a school in Parambo. Why do you need other schools in your, well, there are geographical, if there was a causeway going from Pumlico to Wedgeport, well, it might alleviate some things, but that's not very cost effective. So that won't work. So if you want to go to the next slide, and I would like, the next one actually, thank you. What I would like to do now is kind of just go over briefly some of the conditions of the school. So the photo to the left, and the pictures speak 1,000 words, as to use a cliche. You can see how full of dust and particles that the radiators are. So that doesn't help very much with the ventilation and with asthmatic conditions, and it encourages the growth of certain items that we don't want. There's la sueur, sweat on the gymnasium, which is relatively new, on the gymnasium wall. Coverings on the pipes. Don't know what that is, and I don't want to guess publicly, but it could, it's doubtful what kind of insulant is used for those pipes. So those are items, those are things that appear in the school, and they are all over, that appear in all of the areas that are doubtful and do show its age. Next slide, please, Alex. One of the challenges with this school is that it's not very accessible to people, to the students who have mobility challenges. So this is the playground in the back. You can see the bank, and really the picture is not does not show as evidently as it could the challenges, but immediately behind the photographer, the bank goes down very, very steeply. And so children who have mobility challenges cannot partake as much in the school activities. Now, speaking of which, and I did mention earlier, the elevator. In January of this year, I believe it was around January 15, they arrived at the school. Two things occurred that day. Number one of the boilers wasn't working, or they had no heat at the school, and the elevator wasn't working. There's a class that has a student on the second floor that requires the elevator to be used. They moved that class immediately to the first floor, so there was some access for that student. And the report today, there was a report from the school today indicating that there were some technicians there attending to the elevator, but it still is not. At the last report I had, it was not functioning. Any words? No. Okay, so I'm checking to see if anybody has other words. So that's one of the main points that we need in order, or one of the main points that we are making in order to have a more modern school. To the next slide, please. Thank you. There are other challenges. Coming in and out of the school parking lot is an escapade every day. It's tight, it's crowded, and is not very conducive to a safe and secure environment. There are doors that don't close properly. That's throughout the school. Next slide, please. Now, this is one of my favorites. I call it the octopus. This is a picture of how they recharge school electronic instruments. I don't believe that that's very safe. I believe that that is quite unsafe in the circumstances. So there are some classes that only have one or two plugs, so they have to put power bars and whatnot. So the next slide, please. As you can see, there are deteriorating walls. There are electrical cords that fall underneath the radiators and whatnot. The next slide, please. Radiators have holes in them. They're old-style radiators that if you hit a yardstick on the side will reverberate for quite a few seconds. So then the next slide, please. There are coverings that you see on the bathroom ceiling that cover what was moisture and whatnot. Doors that don't quite close tightly, snow comes in. Now here is my absolute favorite. This is one of the part of the school, and this is insulation that was used for the school that is still present. That is eelgrass in the school. That is still there. So that goes to my point of how old the school is. Eelgrass is a very good insulant, but it's not of, and I recall I'm old, well, the school was constructed in 1961, I was born in 62. It's a very good insulant, but it's not used very much in modern times. So what we ask the CSRP is for a school in as soon as possible. And if you go to the next, and with those points, and I'm trying to be as brief as possible, Monsieur le Préfet, just so that I stay within the confines of the period that you have. Now, one of the things that we are asking the CSRP to do is to set us into a proper priority to present to the Minister of Education for a new school to be built in West Pumlico. So once that school is announced, at that point, there would be discussion. We can't have that discussion now openly because, obviously because there's no school that's been announced. But then at that point, where your involvement would be, maybe when the school is announced, we would seek to have a centre communautaire as well around the school with a variety of different services, which could include a daycare, some incubation centers of some nature, maybe even a public library, so those things may be of interest to the municipality, but that is a discussion that would come later. So we are not only interested as a committee to be in partenariat, in partnership with le Conseil scolaire, but with other interveners as well, such as yourselves perhaps in the future. Before we go to questions, if you may, I just want to give you a brief outline of what efforts we have done now, up to now, as part of our volunteer approach. As indicated, we were formed in June of 2021. We've sent a number of letters to the Minister of Education. And now, we also, in December of 2021, presented to the Conseil scolaire more or less this PowerPoint presentation. In order for a new school to be constructed, we're the only school board. Le Conseil scolaire acadien provincial is the only school board, and the others are regional education centers. But each of those units has to present its priorities in infrastructure on a yearly basis. And of course, there are a number of priorities all over the province, and the Conseil scolaire sets its priorities as well. In 2022, after our presentation, they set the priorities. We were third in line, behind, out of approximately 8 priority infrastructure requests from the CSRP to the Minister of Education. In front of us, number 1 was Beaumarin, which is the school in Chesetcook, and that they had a valid point. They took over a former school in the Chesetcook Porters Lake area that I believe was first constructed in the 1950s. So that we definitely acquiesced to that. Number 2 was L'École de la Rive Sud in Bridgewater. There, of course, it's a relatively new school, but as it happens all the time, build it and they shall come, it was bursting at the seams. So they needed some more space. But we were third. Fast forward to June of 2023, last June, Beaumarin gets its funding. All right, so logic tells me that if Beaumarin gets its funding, we should be bumped to number 2. Wrong. The Conseil scolaire had a rethought of its priority listing in the fall, bumped us down to number 4, with a somewhat valid point, but still one that we would argue should be reconsidered again. it's because there are they need two new facilities in the Halifax area, because there are sufficient number of students, according to them, in the Halifax area that really don't have any seats, is the expression. Il n'y a pas de siège à s'asseoir dedans in the school. So what happened is that we were bumped down to number 4 as a result. So we are now number 4 on the list. Since our inception, we have had 2 public meetings. The first one, it was so-so, but the second one in November of this year was much more broadly attended to. There were a number of younger families represented there. It was quite wonderful, and we started lobbying some people in order to help us to maybe eventually, I introduced our committee, and those of you who know us, I don't have any children in school. I have grandchildren in school. So it's perhaps, it's a long and drawn out process. So we may not be there ourselves when the new school is announced, but we were very pleased with our November meeting. We have also, as part of one of those meetings, nonetheless, a letter writing campaign went to the minister and all that. But what we're getting back from the minister is go back to the CSAP, but we're just keeping ourselves in tune with the minister. We have kept our local MLA, of course, up to date on everything, and he has recently sent a letter to the Minister for Education, Madame Drouin, seeking that we be considered as well. And we have kept our MP as well informed, just keeping him in the loop, Chris D'Entremont, for the purposes of ensuring that if and when the time comes, not if, when the time comes and we start talking about a centre communautaire, well then it will be something that he's not, it's not foreign to him at that point. In the future, or what is coming forward, as I indicated, we will be presenting back to the CSAP perhaps a little bit more emotionally and a little bit more strongly coming this spring because of the way that where we're finding ourselves, and we want to make sure that we are continually heard at that level. Also, we have, or we acknowledge that there's an election, provincial election, because this is the province has the mandate to provide educational facilities for the students here in Nova Scotia. They're the ones who are providing the funding. So we will have a strategy to address during the upcoming election campaign in 2025, and we're developing that. So I come to my ask, and I did provide you as well, simply with not wanting to make in any way, shape, or form any kind of assumptions, but just suggested. We are asking for a letter from yourselves, a letter of support, nothing more at this point, addressed to Madame Drouin, the Minister of Education. Of course, if you would be so kind as to do that, we'd also ask you to copy the CSAP and ourselves, and simply to render your support. And I thought we thought, actually, the committee thought it was a good idea to approach you at this point in time in our process, so that you are aware. I know that Councillor Digdon has been present, and whenever I have an opportunity to speak with any one of you, it's something that we mention, and you've probably heard about it. So anyway, in summary, our ask is simply for a letter of support at this time in the manner that you're capable of doing so. I am open for questions.
Okay. I don't think that it's too much of an ask for us. We support definitely your cause here. Looking at these pictures, you don't know what's in there. Like it's it can be a hazard to the students as well. And so it's open for question. I have Councillor Digdon.
Not so much as a question as I'd make a motion that we as a municipality, as a council, send a letter of support to the minister, and that backing up their cause. And it's not only their cause, it's a cause for all of the municipality, really.
Yeah. Seconded by Councillor D'Entremont. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded, carried. I have Counselor D'Entremont.
Just wondering about location. I mean, I guess maybe it might be too early for location, but is there any location in mind?
No, the process is such that once the province announces the funding, the ball is clearly in their court. So they're the ones who determine where they are. Now, prior to coming here, and you guys know what my profession is, I went on Property Online and just refreshed my memory. So you own most of the real estate around there, and the Conseil Scolaire, for those of you who are geographically, between the Municipality of Argyle and the Conseil Scolaire, you own a whole U. So starting where the driveway, the principal driveway goes in, then all the land that the school comprises all the way to the shore, and then coming back to where La Chope à Tiremont used to be, and as well as your tennis courts and all that, up to the main highway. You own all of that, or between you and the Conseil Scolaire, that is publicly owned. So it would be an obvious option, but would it be the only one? We don't know. I was listening to Michel Collette Michel Collette? I think this morning on the Radio-Canada, indicating that about a process for another school, once an announcement is made, a committee is struck, probably of some functionaries as well as members of the community, and it goes from there.
Is there like a requirement as far as acreage or?
Not to my knowledge. There probably is, and there are probably some requirements, but at this point, we're not
right.
aware of that.
Great, thank you.
Counselor Surratt.
Real, good presentation, by the way. Any numbers for students in the next 5 years? Has that been done by the CSAP to give an idea to back you up what you're looking for?
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we're going to need to do in order to develop the centre communautaire aspect. We're not there yet. We have to find some funding in order for a study, feasibility study to be done. So we're not, right now the population is around 100, and similar as École Westport, and yeah, similar population strains. So no, we're not aware of
presentation, very good presentation, and wish you nothing but the best in your endeavor here. It's-
Dealing with the school, we still have homework to do. Pun very much intended. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Préfet. Merci beaucoup, conseiller. Et nous apprécions beaucoup votre appui dans ce dossier.
Okay.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. Okay, the next is the adoption of minutes. We have the January 25th, 2024 Executive Council meeting minutes. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing no one coming forward, the minutes stand approved as presented. Next item is recognizing Argyle Council announcements. Anybody who has anything that they want to bring up? I have Councillor Bork.
Well, thank you, Warden. I just wanted to say that today I had the honor to go and visit grade 10 class and D'Entremont's class, and they were studying about the municipality, different levels of government, and they invited me to go meet them, and that was a really nice experience that I had with them. Very bright students, and they're going to be coming to visit the municipal office on the 22nd. I believe, so I told them that I'd probably come same time as them. So it was fun, and I thank Anne for inviting me. That was really nice.
So the questions that they had were mostly like what?
Well, they
How-
were
how-
they
how
were
did it-
looking
how
on
it
our
runs,
they were looking on our website, and they looked at our priorities.
Oh, okay.
So they had questions like, why did the Mariner Center got built in
okay.
Yarmouth? Well, I had to explain that we couldn't afford to build it by themselves. And same thing with the Wedgeport sewer system. They were wondering, like, what was that all about? And I just told them, like, what a counselor does. And so, and I said, we're all human, we have to get along, and that's how a good council works. And we work with our partners outside,
Thank you.
basically. Thank you.
Deputy Warden.
Thank you. I just was wondering if anybody has driven by the Eelbrook Fire Hall lately? It's yeah, it's looking good. It's getting there. It's near completion. End of April, early May is when they're thinking it will be completed. So I just wanted to bring that up. It's exciting.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, seeing no one else coming forward, we're at Warden's report. There's an attachment. If anybody has any questions on it. Committee reports. Anybody have any committees that they would like to report on? Any committees that you're involved in? Deputy Warden.
Thank you. Just quickly for the Mariner Center expansion. So we had looked at the bylaws, we approved the amendments. So we will be having a meeting next week to choose our new EPC member. The weekly updates continue, but we are on track. Things are going well. Things are going actually quite well. So as soon as I know, as soon as Mark forwards something to me, I forward it to council so that you guys are aware. Other than that, we had an ARC meeting. We have another one next week. Talked a lot about our seniors' activities and how well that they're doing. And doctor recruitment, I haven't had a new meeting since the last time.
Thank you. Councillor Surratt.
Don't have anything to report, really. It's just a question for our deputy CAO. Maybe you could check in, I don't see the airport on our list. Yarmouth Internet Committee reports. It used to be there, and could you just check, maybe it was just something that was left? Yeah. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. Next item is the 7-day notice. We have 3 items. And number 1 is Phase 1 and 2 of Wedgeport Sewer. Second one is Phase 3, and the other one, there's, Phase 3 sewer policy, I guess, and anti-discrimination and harassment policy. And I'm going to turn that over to Renee, if anybody has any questions. No? Not that one? The first readings.
Yeah.
Sorry, Renee.
He's like, oh.
So, put you on the spot there. I was just testing you. I want to know how much you knew. Yeah, that's the next item. I'm sorry about that. Phase 1 and Phase 2 of the Wedgeport sewer policy. You've all had a chance to look at this. And again, it's a 7-day notice. No questions on that. Article C-52. Go ahead, Councillor Saulnier.
This is for CAO. Just for the record here, I think the yearly fee is $200 per unit or per user, and is that self-sufficient? Does Argyle have to put any money in beyond that?
Thank you for the question. So first of all, the fee that was in the policy was mentioned in the policy, and it was intended to be the initial fee, but like anything else, fees go up, and in this case, they go up and down. So we started it at a fairly large amount and then dropped it when we saw that we had, the result was a surplus. So now, and then we had to increase it because we went too far the year before, and so we had to recover. The answer to your question is we do not currently absorb any costs, any direct costs. Any costs that we have on the Wedgeport sewer would be the time and energy that the salaried operational staff will go in and do. So what happens is if there's a repair or if there's an issue or if there's a cleaning that has to be done by our staff, we don't charge that to the Wedgeport system because the system is far too small and it's completely individual for the most part. If we have to buy certain things for repairs, we can do that through the budget, but we don't allocate a significant amount of our time towards the project. And that relates to both the Phase 2 and the incoming Phase 3. And so it's self-sufficient for now. And not complete because there is a contribution towards services, and that's true of all wastewater. The West Pubnico and Tusket also benefit from time and energy from our operational staff that's not charged to their budgets. Wedgeport actually has a designated staff, West Pubnico has a designated staff person, and that person is paid for 100% by the rate of West Pubnico, but there's almost 630 users. So it's a much larger, more sophisticated system.
Those just a service provided.
Yeah, and I mean, I know I'm getting a little deeper on this one, but it's intended to pay for cleaning, mostly predominantly for cleaning these septic tanks that have to be done every so often. And so what we're doing is we're charging so much per year so that when it comes time for those systems to be cleaned, we'll have the money for each of those systems. Now, as you might imagine, they probably all have to be cleaned at the same time because they were all constructed in the same year. So that's the intention of that fee. We are discussing the long-term future of those septic tanks because they are on individual properties. Some property owners have asked us to consider transferring the ownership to them so that there would no longer be that fee. They would deal with it themselves. And we cannot do that under our current funding model, but after a certain amount of years after the development, that can be considered. So lots of side answers to your question. And hopefully it's not too much detail.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on any of those? There's two for the Wedgeport. Councillor Boudreau.
I'm wondering, thank you, Warden. I'm wondering about Phase 3. Are we up for questions on Phase 3? I want to clarify something here on at on ownership responsibilities 8.2. It says failure by the owner to provide reasonable access may result in termination of registration at the municipality's discretion. Can you clarify that for me?
I'm just reading that sentence and trying to read it in context to the other items there, so forgive me. The terminology of termination of registration, I can see where that might be confusing, because even when I read it, I'm like, okay, well, where are we going with that? But I think what we're trying to say is that the municipality has the right to reasonable access to that property for repair or for other purposes. I think what we can do is maybe clarify that sentence a bit more, because I think you're raising a good point.
Yeah.
Around, it's not that clear what termination
Yeah.
of registration might mean.
Yeah,
We can certainly bring that one back to the
Perfect.
final reading.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? And then there's the anti-discrimination and anti-harassment policy. Any questions on that one?
Thank you,
Deputy,
Mr. Chair. I
CEO.
just wanted to speak to that one. As you can tell, that there's a lot of new language there. It was a policy that was created back in 1988 with language around like obsolete language stating like females should have the same pay as a male and all that thing. So I kind of removed all those obsolete language and kind of modernized it. You just in regards to, that we should treat people with dignity and not harassment and those types of things, and define the definition of harassment, and also like it also kind of provides the process for if folks are involved in a harassment case, what they should do, and some remedial action so what could possibly happen to. So it's just kind of modernizing that policy that needed to be done. So.
Okay. Next item is for decision and discussion. I guess those we'll turn that over if you have any questions. It's the development agreement here in Tuscan for, another one is land use bylaw housekeeping. Now, we had, these all came to the PSC, but the rest of council hasn't heard, but you've all had a chance to read them, and I'm going to open that up to Rene, if he has anything to say before.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Warden. I just want to do a few, I just want to give the members that weren't at the PAC a little brief history on it. It's just we received a DA application back in September for an automobile station retail store and restaurant with a drive-through just here in Tuscan, north of Anchor Grounds. And the LUB allows the first two uses, the restaurant and gas station convenience store, but requires a DA for the drive-through only. So it's basically the only thing we're here, the DAs for is just a drive-through. The property's recently been consolidated from the 3 separate properties, which were all under the same ownership. The zoning on the property is going to be split between light industrial zone and mixed use zone. Both zones permit the proposed use, however, both zones require drive-through, and it has to go through planning. So again, yeah, the only reason we're discussing the application here tonight is for the drive-through. All other uses are as of right and cannot be enforced as through a DA. The main factor for enforcement for the DA would be traffic, which the applicant requires approval through Department of Public Works, and they have received that approval. So that's just a little update. And the PAC did have a question back in January, on January 30th meeting. There was a question regarding the drive-through, which was operating on the bordering property just beside us. Was it allowed, or or was it operating as non-conforming use? So we did a little bit of homework on it. Development permit for the cafe and coffee shop was granted on December 16th, 2016, in accordance with the LUB that was effect as of August 9th, 2016 at the time. And the LUB just categorized the area as mixed use, permitting all commercial uses except motor vehicles, racetracks, and drag strips. So hence the cafe, coffee shop with a drive-through was allowed as of right. The requirement for the DA for a drive-through was introduced when the LUB was amended on June 23rd, 2020. So unfortunately, the applicant contacted the department. Their intention is to build a gas bar, convenience store, and drive-through restaurant. We found because of the drive-through, a DA is required. All other uses are permitted. This brought new discussion within the department to assess possibly add a new zone to this area to possibly remove some restrictions on development of new commercial businesses. So that's just an update for all the council members. So.
Any questions?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Oh, okay.
So move.
That's what it was for. No, it just came on after. So there's a motion on the floor, and that's just to approve Article C23 of the, I'm sorry, the first development agreement at PID 900873888. So if there's no questions, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded, carried. The next one, C50, I'm on the wrong thing here. Bylaw housekeeping amendments. Are you going to take that?
So there was another issue brought at the PAC. The same meeting was just minor LUB amendments. We'll just kind of do a brief summary. I counted 14 housekeeping amendment changes, 2 changes to be consistent with the Nova Scotia Building Code regulations. One would have been addition of lot requirements. We didn't have any set guidance for special use. There's an addition of minimum standard setbacks. One was language duplication or change. 3 conversion errors. One small grammatical error. One omitted as of right in Part 11, which didn't allow welding or machine shops in marine industrial zones. So 3 definition changes, restrictions on operation hours contained within the restaurant or restaurant evening patio. We just replaced it to be consistent with the definition found in Nova Scotia food safety regulations. We removed the hours just to make things a little bit streamline things. And then the last one would have been automobile service station. We add sale of electricity for the purpose of charging and operating vehicles. Just that's how it's going now. So 2 would have been additional language added to clarify setbacks. And then there was another question brought at the PAC, just for the other councillor members that weren't there. Will any LUB housekeeping amendments restrict building or development in the municipality? And the answer would have been the only possible item that may restrict new development in LUB amendments could be the variance size of other requirements relating to yards, except when the yard directly abuts an identified watercourse. And the other one would have been 4.25 minimum yard setbacks for a main and accessory dwelling abutting identified watercourse. So any yard should be no less than 25 feet away and shall not be permitted to be varied. So keeping in mind just that a variance isn't required on a typical application. For example, last year we had 145 development permits where there's only 3 applications for a variance. All 3 variants were issued with no inquiries or comments from the residents, as we do mail outs. The neighboring properties within 330 meters all get notified. 2 applications for variances, both requested a larger ground floor area for accessory accessory building. And then the last one, which brought the restrictions on the variance in water, water courses and oceans, where they requested an extra to be 5 foot closer than the minimum setback, and we granted that one just because they would not have been able to build their house. So that was just that was the one that brought more questions to the department. Just we wouldn't want to see, everybody's going to be wanting to apply for a variance for that, and we just feel that this one it triggered a lot of discussion. And I mean, we have a large number of land with watercourse or coastlines, and we already have vulnerable areas for flooding in the municipality. So there's going to be other restrictions coming forward, I think provincially. So we just felt this one was a good one to have. So that's it.
Any questions? Councillor Donaldson.
Yeah, was there any consideration given to elevation over setback in that 25 feet setback? But that's not going to do you no good if you're basically water level, right? But you could be 10 feet from the water if you're 15 feet up on a bank, right? So
No, we didn't go with any elevation requirements. We just stayed with the 25 feet away setback, the minimum 25 feet away. So
just my point, I guess you could be closer than 25 feet if you're well in the, elevated, right? That's all I'm thinking about. Anyhow.
Okay. I'm still on. Speaker one there. Okay, if there's no other questions, we need a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Moved by Councillor Bork, seconded by Councillor Boudreau. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded, carried. The next item, C, low-income property tax exemption policy amendments, and the reason for that amendment, as you've seen in the past, we've changed the amounts, and the amounts were mentioned in the policy. So if we change that, we would remove that, so that would give us an opportunity by the end of February to change the amounts without having to go through the policy change, which is the reason I do believe that I'm correct in saying that. So it makes it a lot easier for us. I mean, the amount can stay the same or it can change, and we wouldn't have to go through what we're doing right now in changing the policy. Any questions? If none, need a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Donaldson, seconded by Councillor Bork. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded, carried. Next one is the NSFM membership. We pay that every year. We have to pass this every year. Okay. It's moved and seconded. CAO Muse.
Yes, every year. Perhaps we should ask Renee to speak very long on this topic.
Why not? Yeah. Are you ready? We have you here, we've got to use you. Councillor D'Entremont.
I already gave him permission to leave, by the way. But my next question was, I thought that usually this was approved during our budget deliberations and not in the month of February.
That's an excellent observation. He's an observationalist.
Yes.
We usually do this at the annual meeting of council.
Yeah, right.
And the billing cycle for the NSFM has started 2 months before it normally does. So usually what would happen, like the amount of money that they require, this will be for next year. So this isn't actually for this year's membership, it's for next budget year, so you're quite right to raise it. Reason why we're asking for permission now is because they want the money like 2 months before the year end. Yeah, so we took a bit of a liberty there to give it to you a little early, but it's an insignificant amount when looking at the budget.
Deputy
Just want to
CEO.
clarify, who seconded that motion? I know Richard. Iggy? Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay, we need a motion on this.
We need to vote. We
Pardon
just
me?
need to vote. They already made the motion.
Oh, they made the
Yeah.
motion on that one. Sorry. Any other questions? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded, carried. Correspondence. We have four pieces of correspondence. Letter re coastal flooding, there's an attachment. I don't know if anybody has any questions on that. We have letter, Department of Public Works, Creamy Tree intersection, that was discussed last time. We already made the motion on that one. Same Public Works with the crosswalk painting, that was done. And Remo letter. Anybody have any questions on that one? Seeing none, financial requests, I don't see any. Agenda topics for next meeting, notice of motion by councillor. Any questions that came through online? No questions? We have no in camera. You're chuckling.
Oh, my gosh.
That's the end of our agenda. Meeting's adjourned.